Hello, and welcome to Growing Together, a podcast where we discuss all things related to church planting and vitality in the Presbyterian Church in America. I'm Chris Vogel, the Church Planting and Vitality Coordinator for Mission to North America. This podcast exists to cultivate kingdom advancement in the PCA by connecting leaders, increasing awareness of the work being done, and promoting growth through discussions on church planting and vitality. Join us today as we grow together. Welcome to this Growing Together webinar as we discuss preparing for the harvest together. This is our second in a series of webinars where we explore how PCA agencies and committees are working towards shared objectives through strategic collaboration. When our organizations with similar missions come together, they can amplify their impact, enhance their resources, and tackle challenges in innovative ways that may not be possible when working alone. Now, we are fellow workers together for the gospel, and that is why we should be talking about how inter-committee collaboration contributes to the overall expansion and vitality of our churches. Well, and thank you for joining us. And as others are logging in, just want to let you know we will be taking questions later, about halfway through our time. So please make use of the Q&A box or the chat box there on Zoom. Well, with us today are coordinators, presidents of several of our PCA committees. Tom Gibbs is the president of Covenant Theological Seminary, and joining him is James Dixon, the Vice President of Advancement there at Covenant Seminary. Ed Dunnington is the President of the Geneva Benefits Group, and Erwin Entz, the Coordinator of Mission to North America. And I'm Chris Vogel, M&A's Church Planting and Vitality Coordinator and your host. Well, welcome, gentlemen, for our time together.
Great to be
here. Let's start off. Yeah, let's start off with just real briefly, each of you talk about your organization, your mission, your vision. Or Erwin, would you kick us off, please, on that?
Be happy to, Chris, and it's always good to be with you, brothers. So Mission to North America, our purpose and our service to the PCA is to help cultivate the advancement of the kingdom through the PCA in the United States and Canada. And so missionally, we exist striving to serve with expertise and excellence all PCA churches, presbyteries, and networks by offering a suite of practical ministry resources that help our churches be equipped to advance the gospel in their communities. And so our vision around this, as we've been talking about for the past couple of years, is to help facilitate the growth of the denomination by 50% to 3,000 congregations in the next less than decade now. And we are trying to get after that work through prayer and collaborative efforts like this.
Great. And Tom, you've been in your role for just over 3 years now, and recently saw By Faith post an article about how under your tenure, Covenant is really getting great momentum in training pastors. Tell us what's happening there and in your vision.
Yeah, thank you, Chris. It's a joy to be with you brothers, and grateful for the work that we're doing together. Covenant Seminary, of course, has been around for a little bit. We began in 1956, and our primary charge as an institution has always been to train pastors. We state that our mission is to glorify the triune God by training his servants to walk in God's grace, to minister God's word, and equip God's people, all for God's mission. And so our ministry focus reaches beyond the training of pastors. We have important degree programs and other Masters of Arts programs, as well as an important counseling ministry that God has given to this institution. But the training of pastors is fundamental to our mission that's given to us by the PCA. And for many reasons, that focus was an important one for me to give to the institution as I came on board in 2021. And it's exciting to see the growth. We've seen growth in each of the last 3 years in our ordained track in the MDiv. And I'm excited about that, excited for the implications of that for not just the PCA, but the many different denominations that Covenant serves.
Yeah, oh, great. Thank you. And Ed, your organization has recently undergone some rebranding. What some of us I don't know if too many people still refer to as RBI, but now it's the Geneva Benefits
Just
Group.
internally.
Yeah, yeah, your own staff keeps using the old moniker, huh? Yeah, tell us about your vision for Geneva Benefits.
Yeah, Chris, thanks again for letting us having us on here. It's great being here with everybody else. We've, as you mentioned, we did rebrand several years ago from RBI to Geneva Benefits Group, but we tried to keep so much of kind of our who we've been through the years, and the way that we have articulated that as of late is that we're here to guide PCA pastors and ministry workers through the complexities of financial planning and retirement readiness and employee benefits, so that they and their families can live generously in every season of life. And part of that for us is connected with, when we think about then what our vision is that we really do believe that the gospel advances and the church thrives as men and women who are serving in ministries are growing spiritually and financially healthy. And so we really view ourselves as a ministry of coming alongside, and which for us means when we think of this whole idea of collaborating with one another, we feel like that's what we've been tasked with this General Assembly to do, is to come alongside. And so we're always thinking and asking the question, what does it look like for us to do that and do it well?
Yeah, oh, that's great. Well, thank you. It's, kind of interesting. People might say, what does seminary and investments have to do together? Because for training pastors, they don't have any money. And so, then that's where we begin to go, no, you don't understand. This is very much where the collaboration is absolutely necessary. Yeah, each of our committees serves at the behest of the General Assembly. We have a mandate from GA. So where would you say collaboration fits into that mandate? Because there's nowhere where it says, now you all have to get along and work together and do stuff together. It's easy to be siloed and stay on our tracks. So how would you answer that? Where does collaboration fit in?
Well, I'll tell you what, I'll go first, Chris, and then you guys can. I think from my vantage point, I really do believe that the GA thrives and flourishes right when all of the committees and agencies are thriving and flourishing, and so for me, as we think in our organization, collaboration is one of the ways that we can leverage each other's strengths and gifts for the church more broadly. And I still am of the mindset that we are better together than separate. Yeah. And I think if that's true, if I do believe that, then I've got to figure out ways to collaborate. And the interesting thing, certainly those of us who've been a part of things and have done the collaboration, we know that as we collaborate, it's in our best interest for one another to succeed. If churches aren't thriving and flourishing, they're going to have a hard time multiplying other churches. Mm-hmm. And if our churches aren't thriving and flourishing, and our ministry leaders aren't, then we are going to see a decrease in the number of folks in ministry who then we need to actually help steward their resources for retirement. So it's in all of our best interests for each other to collaborate. And I think to succeed. And I think part of our history is that we've been siloed, and our denomination has suffered some because of that.
Mm-hmm.
Chris, if I can jump in, I echo what Ed has just said. What I might just remind us of is the church. We say scriptures teach us the church is the body of Christ, and one of the images the scriptures give us is the various members of the body doing their work. And so another word that I know we've used, I know M&A uses, is the idea of the ecosystem. The church is a big ecosystem as it interacts with itself to carry out its mission.
Mm.
And each one of the committees and agencies are attending to one aspect of that ecosystem. The seminary, for example, I think sits both upstream from so many of the mission critical areas of the church, but also downstream from those mission critical areas. So that if the church is flourishing, it's both going to be receiving effectively trained ministry leaders that are going to go out and serve, whether it's in MTW or RUF, or go out and serve in local churches or any of the other various ministries that are blessing our church. But also, as those ministries flourish, the seminary is downstream from the church multiplying and propagating the gospel in an ever reaching movement of God's grace. And this is why we need M&A to plant churches and raise up new ministry partners. And those need to be trained, which they come back to Covenant and send out. And it's the dynamic interplay of the agencies and committees, and not so much the agencies and committees, but the ministry we represent and head up. That's so essential to the work of the PCA. And so, we can't do it well unless the PCA, unless we're collaborating. And that's why the relationships we form with one another are so critical.
No.
And I'll tag along here in affirming what Ed and Tom have said, and nuance it even a little bit more here to say, you're right, Chris, right? You don't find the word collaboration in well, I don't know if you find it anywhere in the rules of assembly operation.
No,
where we get your definitions for
I've never seen
our
a whole lot of
committees
collaboration.
and
That's a different
agencies.
webinar, Erwin. That's a totally different webinar.
But right, we recognize that the PCA has a unifying motto, right? Faithful to the scriptures, true to the Reformed faith, obedient to the Great Commission. It's a unifying motto across all of our churches, all of our committees and agencies, and that as we press into our particular charge from the General Assembly and RAO, we recognize, okay, well, planting churches, it makes sense that we have to collaborate with Covenant Seminary, and Covenant Seminary, rightly, if anyone knows Phil Douglas, church planting promoter guru, right? That Covenant Seminary has its church planting center looking to say, we are looking to raise up church planters, right? Primarily for the PCA and for others. And we know M&A's two-pronged focus of church planting and vitality, which is your title, right, Chris? That vitality, by vitality, we mean at M&A the outward-facing engagement of our churches and congregants for love of neighbor in Jesus' name, proclaiming the good news in their place and communities. But we know for that outward-facing missional movement of our churches, you have to have healthy pastors. Like you have to have pastors that are able to avoid the burnout, that are able to know that they are taken care of well, right? And so this is only just reaffirming what these brothers have said, but from a different vantage point to say it is necessary for us to find ways to be supportive and engaged together.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. James, in your work with advancement, how are you seeing this this collaborative effort play out? Because you're working specifically advancement of the seminary's mission, but
Sure.
there's a denominational component.
Yeah, well, Chris, I'm seeing it. I'll give you two examples. One was born out of conversations that I was able to have with you and Erwin and Murray Lee at General Assembly. That was not the beginning of those conversations, but continued a movement that has grown to include MTW and CDM, where we're coming together to try and figure out ways to expand the pipeline of candidates for vocational ministry, whether they are pastors, counselors, ministry leaders of varying shapes and sizes. and not only to expand that pipeline, to do so further upstream and to give those candidates greater clarity on what that particular vocational ministry might look like. And so we're coming together to do that work. That's one example that has been energizing. A second has been the work that we're doing with RUF to scholarship the RUF interns, and we're collaborating with RUF as an agency and with local RUF campus pastors to incentivize the internship that serves our Covenant children on the campus, but also helps build that pipeline for future campus ministers and pastors.
Good. Yeah, what are some of the other things we're seeing? You know, so we've mentioned some with Covenant and RUF, and where else are we seeing these conversations that are working towards a mutual engagement where our agencies are working together? Because I think a lot of times historically people may have assumed that was happening and then may have been shocked that it wasn't always happening. You know, we're historically kind and nice and pleasant and acting Christianly for the most part towards one another, but then to hear, no, we're really looking at doing things together for the benefit of the whole denomination. What are some of the things that you're aware of that's happening?
So Chris, one additional thing that's top of mind at Covenant Seminary has been our collaboration with Mission of the World. And we entered into a conversation with NTW surrounding our search for a missiologist in the formation of the Paul D. Forster Chair of World Missions. And naming that chair, the Paul Forster Chair of Missions, honors Paul's role both at Covenant Seminary as the president beginning in 1985. He served in 1994, and then he went on to serve as the coordinator for NTW. And that common heritage is obviously marked in the naming of that chair. But what's exciting about it is securing a missiologist to train future students who will go out and serve on the mission field. And that's the real partnership with NTW. And we're excited. It takes quite a bit of money to endow a faculty chair, but that's happened. And we did that in partnership with NTW. And they helped fund this chair, and we now have completed that funding process, and we're in an active search for a missiologist to be seated in that chair. Hopefully that will happen over the next 10 months. Going into next fall, we'll have a new missiologist at Covenant Seminary. Yeah. So that's just an exciting illustration of the kind of collaboration.
I mean, one thing that just struck me as you were saying that, just all of you on the screen here, you're all serving in a different capacity in an agency than you did prior. Two of you, James, were you a church planter?
I was a church planter in Trussville, Alabama.
All right. So church planter, a pastor. Tom, you planted Redeemer in San Antonio. Ed, you were in Roanoke. And now you're in different roles, different agencies serving. Erwin, in a similar way. Same with me. So yeah, there's a reality that so many of us will move between agencies. So to have those conversations are so important. Yeah, Erwin.
Just another very real example, and it also involves MTW. When you think about, again, the shifting demographics here in the U.S. and Canada, the conversations with MTW to say, listen, the United States is growing in diversity, right? It's going to become a majority-minority country in the coming decades, and it only makes sense for us to be learning from each other, as MTW has been doing global missions, right? And for us to work together. And so in just a few weeks at the MTW Global Missions Conference in Atlanta, MTW earlier in the year, late last year, maybe invited us to collaborate with them in this conference. And so Certainly Lloyd Kim and I will be doing a panel together. We've got church planter preparation training
Right.
ahead of the conference, and so people will experience that collaborative effort live.
And part of that, with that church planter preparation, the facilitators will both be North American planters and global planters.
That's right.
And the participants in each of the tracks will be both MTW and M&A church planters. And so seeing it, but along with that, we're also will have, Paul Joyner from Geneva will be talking about pastoral wellness. Because, just giving planters some of the technical, tactical skills is not enough for longevity. You need to think about wellness and well-being, which is where.
And I think that's one of the places that we've been able to come and say, how can we serve? For years we've had the opportunity to be in the classroom at Covenant Seminary to talk with students as they're getting ready to graduate and say, look, as you take that first call, here's some things you need to be thinking about, and to be a resource to them, to work with sessions and say, hey, look, let us be the ones to have conversations that'll be more awkward for you to have, and to be a resource from the ground with those folks. And then, as you mentioned, Paul Joyner is and the work we've been doing with M&A on the well-being side of things. We are trying to think of ways to strengthen the partnership that we have with Auxilio, right? And how they're providing back-end support for the church plants that we have, and how can we streamline that and make it easier for those in ministry. Then, one of the things that we recently in February, we are hosting a biblical values conference, biblical values investing conference, that it's actually going to be held at Covenant College. We're working with Lance Wisher, who's the econ department there, and they're gonna host it, and we're putting together that we're trying to involve all of the committees and agencies, so that we can, Lord willing, have some overarching white paper that all of us could help all of our committees and agencies as we're thinking about different, the investments that all of them are managing. So
that's helpful. Yeah, I mean, likewise, I'm going to be at Covenant College talking with students, talking about ministry, because if we want planters, talking to them in their early 20s, but then part of that is, okay, if you're going to be a planter, you're going to also need seminary. And so it's one thing for the seminary to send someone down there to recruit, but someone that seems to have no vested immediate interest points them in that direction. There's an aspect they see that they can be part of a larger team and organization, and that's very healthy. That's great. Well, good. What are some of the challenges or even barriers that you might see to collaboration between our agencies within our organization? It's great to talk about it, and things are happening, and it's exciting, but we can't not acknowledge there are often some hindrances to this whole process.
Who wants to go first?
Go
chomping at the bit to talk about the opportunity.
Yeah.
Well, I think one of the things that is certainly has a broad awareness around all of us as officers in this denomination know that we also say that the PCA is a grassroots denomination, right? And so that there's great intentionality that the quote unquote authority and the quote power structure, if we use lack of a better word, is not situated in the denominational committees and agencies, right? That the highest court, the General Assembly, gives us our marching orders, and we go from there. And so there is, in some respects, a healthy, in other respects, an unhealthy concern around collaborative effort at the denominational committee and agency level. And so that is just a challenge that is always going to be there because of the structure of the PCA. So what that means for us as leaders of these committees and agencies is to be be overly forthright in how we communicate the work that we're doing things like this, making sure that as we engage with the permanent committees and boards of the agencies, that everything is on the table, that everything is communicated to the General Assembly, and so that there is there's no gap there in terms of the conversation. And so that's a challenge, but we know it because, I mean, we're longtime members of this church.
No. Any other?
Yes, I would just add, certainly negotiating denominational interests and pressures is, that there can be a tediousness to that kind of bumps up against kind of pursuing our mission. But I would also just say, like all the challenges we face in pastoral ministry, we just put our head down and we get to doing our thing. And we end up not seeing the opportunities that are around us. And I was just thinking, we all are busy. And so for us to do collaboration, we have to seek it intentionally. And one of the things that I'm just grateful for the committee agencies and heads is there is, I think, a commitment to be intentional about this subject. And if that weren't there, that would be a huge barrier. But so if we just stopped, we Zoom every month and talk about, okay, what are we doing? How are we praying for each other? But that means we all have to commit to making that topic. And so there's just that commitment to be intentional about pursuing this. And of course, there's a million distractions that are competing with that as we seek to do our good work, but doing that good work can also be distracting. So anyway, I'm grateful for these brothers because they want to do that together.
No, that's good. Yeah, the idea of intentionality is important. Yeah, Ed.
Yeah, I agree with what what Erwin and Tom have already said, and I'm grateful for them. And I think they hit on something. Our history is one of, and because of how we came out of the Southern Church, there was suspicion of the General Assembly structures, and so there is just a history piece that we're having to lean against. And as Erwin said, right, so it requires more forthrightness. I think one of the things I'm grateful for is that the 10 coordinators and presidents of the committees and agencies, I would say are friends, right? I mean, and we're not simply acquaintances. Now, some of us know one another more than others, but I would say that we are friends. And I have no doubt that all of the committees and agencies are seeking ways and opportunities to collaborate. And I just, as Tom said, that happens more and more as we have time together with one another, and that takes us out of our mission. We can get focused on our mission. People can call that being siloed, or it can also be just genuine focus on what God has called us to, right? And a single-mindedness, which is not bad. I think the second part of that is recognizing that all 10 of us can be excited and committed to collaboration. And then how does that work itself through the rest of the organization? And I think that becomes a little bit more challenging if, for example, in other committees and agencies, if folks that are in leadership roles don't have an affinity or a commitment to the PCA, right? That they're not, that this isn't their church. And we're a strange group of ducks, man. And it's got to be your family to love. And so, but I think that just takes time, and I'm committed to that.
No. Yeah, and from my vantage point, and James, I think perhaps, well, similar to you, with the conversations we've had, it's great if the 10 of you as the leaders are all getting along, but if the captains, lieutenants, or whatever you want to call them are not, in line, over the last couple years now, when I've just grown in great appreciation and enjoyment of Paul Joyner, and we're just doing a lot. And so when I'm working with planters, I know where to point planters too for health and vitality. The other week, I was out in the San Francisco area with Dr. Robert Kim in his church planting class, and just hearing and seeing not what's happening out in the Bay, but getting to meet those who are in that church planting track at Covenant Seminary. There is a group of us also who are meeting on a regular basis: MTW, RUF, Covenant Seminary, Geneva, just to have these ongoing conversations to say, on our level, what are we able to do? And won't go into all of our dreaming, because I am by nature a dreamer, and I'm not going to start spouting things off and get glared at by any of the presidents or coordinators, some of whom may hold my job in the line. But it's exciting. It's fun to see all that's happening here. Well, as we begin to move towards a time for questions, I want to maybe just one last question for you all is, how can those listening to this be part of this greater collaborative work? What are there action steps for those who are listening? Because we got teaching elders, ruling elders, but not just officers who sign in for these webinars, but men and women in our church and people looking at the PCA from the outside. What would you say would be some things they're able to think about and maybe even do?
Yeah, one of the things that comes to my mind in response to that, Chris, is really just fairly basic, but developing a true awareness of the work of all of the committees and agencies of the denomination. Mm-hmm. So whether you are, as I like to say, from the pulpit to the pew, right? If you are an engaged and invested church member, a congregant, right, to learn about your church, to learn about how we have structured ourselves and in terms of these committees and agencies to be faithful to our Lord, right, in pursuit of his missional and kingdom priorities. And so that would, to me, that's step one, to just get a growing sense of awareness. And in that, you actually might find something that you're really passionate about, something that you may actually be gifted toward or have a talent that you can find ways to serve and engage in some of that work. And so that's the first thing that comes to my mind. I'm sure there are other ways the brothers can add.
I would just piggyback a little bit on the last question to answer this one. I noticed with some irony that my name tag says Tom Gibbs Jr., I guess, but it speaks to something that might be maybe it's an illustration of something that we have unity within the organization on vision. And when you have unity in the organization on vision, then you can go out to collaborate with other agencies. I get the benefit of traveling around this country and meeting with various pastors, associate pastors, ruling elders, and it's thrilling to me to see the vibrancy of our denomination at that grassroots level. But we're trying to bring in those ruling elders, those pastors, into this work and give them a vision for what it is like to collaborate, for them to send us their students. But I think when we as agencies create unity of vision, it lends itself to the various parts, the various members of the agency going out and doing that work and collaborating.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, I would just I think that's what's been said has been great, and I think the only thing I would add is, I think as folks get to know their church and what is offered to them, I think they'll be surprised at how much the founding fathers of the denomination put in place for the good of the church. Mm-hmm. And by not knowing about what the foundation has to offer and what was established at the foundation, or what's being offered at Ridgehaven and other, folks actually miss opportunities for their congregations to grow, serve, and actually be engaged in the work of the kingdom. And so I think I think as you get to know those things, and and if you're in positions to support those things, I think that's a huge part of it.
Yeah, I recently had a conversation with a person, an officer in our church in another part of the country, and he was unaware of the foundation and what it'd be able to do, and to be able to tell him, hey, you might want to check this out, and he realized I can make a much larger investment for the kingdom by working through the PCA Foundation. And it's hard to get. You got to get the word out and understand all of that. Well, great. Well, let's turn our time to some questions. We have a number. As you're with us, feel free to use the chat box if you're more familiar with that. But the Q&A box is helpful because we're able to see it a little bit better. Have actually one question when Gordon just asked or made a statement in a comment. I'll just start with his comment, then mention what he talks about with MTW. The comment is, yesterday he was helped by Paul Joyner at Geneva in a phone counseling session over some trauma regarding a bike car collision, and he unfortunately was on the bike. And I was led to him by an MTW colleague. So again, here's an opportunity from one agency to another, helping. And in a similar way, MTW office has announced they started a workspace sharing plan because of some of their excess capacity. And I know they've reached out and said, hey, is there a church planter, who might want to use this if they're in the, Lawrenceville area. But the question then is, Tom, it'd be more for you. Would Covenant Seminary do the same thing with any excess residential capacity? I don't know if you have excess residential capacity, but he asked that question. Is there something there that maybe even dream or begin to think of?
Yeah, I guess by the phrase residential, and I might be misunderstanding the question, but we do have residential housing that's for students. And I'm glad to say that we're filling that up, that they're actually more now competing for those spaces, which is encouraging because of increased enrollment. But historically, Covenant has had a MTW staff person working on site at various points throughout our history. And so there has been some office sharing in that way. Right now, that's not happening, but we do work with another a Presbyterian group that's affiliated with our missionaries that are not necessarily with MTW. This is people who've been trained here at Covenant Seminary but are going back and serving in their country. This creates a funding mechanism for them to serve. For example, in India, we have a number of graduates who are serving in India, and this is how we help fund them from the States. And we have some office sharing in that regard. So those things are happening in small ways. And I think the question we're always asking is this strategic? Is this aligned with what?
Well, and you all have been hosting the historical society, which is a part of the administrative committee for years, right? I mean,
Yep.
So you all have been home to folks,
Mm-hmm.
and I would also say, Gordon, I know that Lloyd and I have had many conversations about even their space here, and could there be a way that we could help facilitate some of that space? So.
Mm-hmm.
And you've helped M&A by taking over our old space as M&A went remote, and you keep growing. So you outgrew your space, and you've taken over that. So
the Lord has been kind.
Yes. Oh, excellent. Yeah. Next question here is: do you have any specific missionary outreaches to make disciples of Jesus Christ from government officials? And that's been discussed a bit. Do you want to?
Sure. There's a wonderful ministry called Ministry to State that's made up primarily, or staffed primarily by teaching elders who do work primarily in state houses among government officials here in DC and the nation's capital and in a few other states around the country. So it really is an outstanding ministry that is nonpartisan and proclaims the gospel in those places.
Yeah, and we'll be talking about that specifically a bit more, no doubt, at a later date, as well, about ministry to state. So be looking for that. Randy Neighbors asked, how much of our legacy of separation from unbelief and the fear of having denominational leadership collude with the spreading liberal ideas and control decision-making continue to inhabit the present PCA from collaboration, either from denominational agencies or networks across presbyteries? Movements like City, or partnerships are way ahead of us in collaboration. The one thing that does kind of help me here is I understood the history and how these agencies got started when I was, reminded that Mission to U.S., before it was M&A, was housed in Jackson, Mississippi. MTW, I believe, was in Birmingham, and the AC was in Atlanta. Of course, this, later became the seminary was up in St. Louis. There was a little concern that you all would talk too much and take control. But what's your thoughts now? That was then. This is now. How do we answer that question?
This is a great question. Thank you, Randy. And I think denominations are like families, in that we have our family of origin stories. And so the PCA has its own origin story born out of the liberal conservative conflict that was really most of the 20th century. And part of that conversation is a fear about centralized control as embodied in agencies and things. And I think it's important for us to acknowledge that story. But I also think it's important for us to move forward, recognizing that as we work together, great things can be done for the kingdom of God. And it looks like I've frozen here, guys. But here we go. But and that's part of the story of even Covenant's founding. Covenant Seminary was founded out of the Bible Presbyterian Church, in which some were fearful of creating a seminary and others wanted to create a seminary. And so that's just in our family of origin story. But one of the things that's exciting for me is we can tend to relate to that through structures and procedures and things like the BCO and the RAO. But we also need to recognize that those partnerships are also forged across relationships. And we're all working within the confines of the RA and the BCO. But it's really the power of collaboration that's in the context of these relationships. And I say we seize that opportunity. And I think that's what we're doing right now. Mm-hmm. And I'm just grateful for the opportunity that we have a group of agency committee heads and presidents who want to do that together.
Yeah. And a group of leaders that love to quote from the BCO and RAO. And for those that don't know, the Book of Church Order and the Rules of Assembly Operation, So, good.
Yeah, I do think Randy's question is a great one. And like Tom said, I agree. I think, and I do think that as presidents and coordinators, as long as we remain mindful of our family story as a denomination, that we can empathize with the concern, but also invite appropriate levels of engagement, because we are not the church in the PCA as it stands today is not in the state that the church was when they departed in the 60s and late or growing late 60s and then in the early 70s when they formed the PCA. And I think that's important for us to remember and not lose sight of.
Yeah. Let me just tag on there. not necessarily as a direct answer to Pastor Randy's question, but to say that one of the benefits that we have in our role is we see a lot of the PCA. We travel a lot. We speak at lots of PCA churches and presbyteries. And it is a privilege because, certainly from my vantage point, I get to experience the unity of our denomination around our biblical and confessional commitments that you may have in. It doesn't matter if I am in a community that is overwhelmingly secular in terms of where I am in the country, or if I am in the heart of the Bible Belt. The PCA churches there are striving to be faithful to the scriptures, true to the Reformed faith, and obedient to the Great Commission. And it's a beautiful thing to see, so that to embrace and say, hey, it's been working. Right? And so we can become a much more practically unified church with this collaborative effort.
Joey Knight asks, is there a site or location where we can see the annual goals of each PCA committee organization and see the progress? Are there quarterly or yearly newsletters or reports on these things? Or is this more internal for those in the trenches of each organization? And he later says, I ask because I have a personal goal to stay more informed outside of just of our local flock, but also have our church, our flock, more informed, aware, and engaged in the PCA as a broader family of believers. How would you where would you
certainly
direct, Joey?
Certainly, right? And I believe these things can be found on the PCA Administrative Committee website. But the reports from General Assembly, I may start with the stated clerk's report about the state of the PCA, but we all deliver reports annually to the General Assembly for each committee and agency. We have a written report that gets included in the GA documents. We all give a verbal report. Those recordings are available as well. And some of us go a little too long in our verbal report and get cut off by the committee chairman and have to stop. But but there are, and then each of the committees and agencies have committee meetings and put together minutes that can be accessed as well. What other things did you guys add to that?
Well, Chris, I would just add, Covenant Seminary does prepare an annual report. And I don't know if we've made that public on our website yet. James is probably telling me yes or no. What do you got on that, James?
It's going out on a monthly email blast, and we have paper copies that we'll be sending out to many of the churches.
Okay. And then I would just highlight that Covenant's in the middle of a strategic plan that we recently adopted in January, and we made that available, like Erwin is saying, at the General Assembly this past summer. And you could find that information on our website. So there's a lot of information on each of these guys' websites. And then through the AC committee and the General Assembly reporting, there's tons of information there too.
Yeah. And I mean, the short answer is there is no one place to go. And this right. The downside of a grassroots movement or denomination is that you got to go to different places to get this data. But we do have, we're the same. Geneva has an annual report that's on our website. We too are in the first year of a 3-year strategic plan. We made that available, and I can send you that as well if you're interested.
Mm-hmm.
So we all have email lists as well. You can get, you can get more information than you ever dreamed you would by getting on the email list as well.
Yeah. These are not closed books or secret societies. It's out there. You just have to kind of reach out, and sometimes they ask us for that information. Good. Well, Maria Gary asked, saying fewer men want to enter church planting or the pastorate because of the stress on wives and families. Please mention how you support wives in each of the agencies.
Yeah, so I can jump on this initially, and then everybody. We for years now have provided the chair's counseling benefit, which provides affordable, accessible, and confidential counseling for pastors' wives. As we've been rolling out our well-being initiatives, in particular the cohorts that Paul Joyner is going to be running starting in 2024 or 2025. I do. There's going to be a component part of that that will include wives. So it's not just going to be the minister himself, but those are two of the ways that we are. But then I also know that CDM is trying to come alongside the wives of all elders, not just teaching elders, but ruling elders as well.
Mm-hmm.
Yep.
But it's a great question.
Yep.
I think it's a huge need, and I think it's one of the places. Certainly, our team is always trying to figure out what does it look like for us to help give not just the pastor, but his spouse the tools and resources they need to navigate the challenges of ministry.
Yep. And that is, you're right about CDM with Megan May who is running the Wives of Elders effort there with CDM. There is a wonderful ministry that used to be under Mission to North America, but it's not any longer. It's just a strongly recommended ministry. Of course, Maria, you are very active in Parakaleo. We always encourage our church planters, church planters' wives to be engaged. Parakaleo is a ministry my wife was engaged with Maria, as a matter of fact, in her group when we were planting. And so that is still a fabulous ministry for supporting church planting wives.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, and I would just add, Chris, as we as we think about the ongoing need in ministry and the challenges our wives face, but upstream from that, in terms of ministry preparation, this is a conversation that we're having at Covenant. And in fact, in just a few weeks, we're having a ministry spouse foundations weekend. And it's specifically aimed at answering this question for the spouses of those who are headed into ministry, and thinking about how is this going to impact you from experienced wives and ministry leaders, giving their counsel to future wives. And so we're excited about that, but it is a very important need.
Yeah. And when we're doing again, specifically for church planters, about when we're helping to do the preparation, strongly encouraging and making it financially affordable, giving a reduced rate to have couples come, because it's not enough just to have the church planter be trained, but them going through it together, so you have extra set of ears and a place to process all of this. And just, the ongoing opportunities we have because to help our wives, and also recognize in the context of those working in churches, church planters don't plant alone. They always plant in some sort of team, whether it's usually informal, not recognized. And so how are we caring for all of those people, the men and women who are volunteering alongside, as well as the spouses? It's important, very important component. Well, as we wrap up here, question from Mark Miller: what are specific areas of the U.S. and Canada that are exciting, encouraging for church planting activity? Where are some of the geographic areas where church planting appears to be more difficult?
Well, Chris, I think you should answer that question instead of me. I mean, I can speak to it, but you are the church planting and vitality coordinator.
Yeah,
I have a finger more on the pulse of this.
In one way, I would say, what area isn't exciting? Because anywhere a church is getting underway and the gospel is being proclaimed, that's exciting. It's exciting to see the increasing interest, not moving away from, but being added to the planting in cities and in urban areas, but also in small town, rural kind of communities. The needs are there. We're seeing tremendous interest in growth in ethnic minority groups, Mandarin speaking the influx that I've repeated quite often of seeing here in the U.S. This is U.S. statistics. I can't speak to Canada, but in the U.S., the population from the year 2070 will grow from 300 million to 450 million. 82% of that, I think it's 137 million, will be immigrants and their minor children. So what's excited, if we want to really see the gospel move forth in our country and throughout North America, reaching those immigrant communities and training and raising up people for that. Where is it difficult? Everywhere where it's exciting. If it's going to be exciting, it's going to be difficult. And so, we always would talk about, the struggles in New England or and places like Utah or Pacific Northwest. Well, at the same time, as I get around, I'm hearing exciting stuff happening in Maine, up in the Pacific Northwest, what Craig Harris is doing in Yakima, Washington, and starting a movement there. Ben Cappers in St. George's, Utah, in the southwest corner, places you just wouldn't normally think the Lord would be at work, but he is. Because through all this whole thing, we are having a great opportunity to be used of the Lord to move forth and into this plentiful harvest. And it never will cease to be plentiful. It will always be overabundant, and we will never have enough laborers. And that is the very reason, I appreciate all of you and all the other agencies, what they're doing, because we are all working together to prepare laborers for the harvest. So with that, Erwin, any closing thoughts?
Well, this is let me give a brief answer to this. Somebody asked a question about Lausanne
Yes.
Congress in Incheon, South Korea. There was a significant PCA representation there. I was privileged to be there with Lloyd Kim and Brian Chappell, David Cassidy, Mark Davis from PC, a number of other folks, Hannah Nation, who works with the China Partnership, Ashley Belknap with Engaging Disabilities with the Gospel. So there was plenty of PCA folks there worshiping with the global church. And in that connection, I think that one of the things that the point of all of this conversationally and to do these webinars is really reinforcing what we shared at my GA report. The video is still up on our website in 2023, that we are one church with one mission, and it takes all of us, right? That we just are striving to lean into that in whatever ways the Lord enables us to do so, to meet the missional opportunity, the gospel opportunity of our current cultural moment, right? Striving to be faithful to our Lord. So that's my closing salvo.
Well, excellent. Well, everyone, thank you very much, and thank you for all who send in questions, and we're here with us through it all. I'm indeed thankful that for us to move forward, we are all need to be growing together, and that's what we are about here. Well, with that, thank you. Lord bless.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thanks for tuning into this episode of Growing Together. We hope you found the discussion informative and engaging. If you want to stay up to date on all things related to church planting and vitality in the PCA, be sure to subscribe to the podcast. We'd also love to hear your thoughts, so please leave us a rating and review. Help us spread the word by recommending the podcast to other brothers and sisters in the PCA. To stay in the loop and receive updates, visit pcamna.org/growing-together and join our email list. And don't forget to follow us at Mission to North America on Facebook, at PCA M&A on Twitter, and at M&A PCA on Instagram for even more content. Thanks for being a part of the Growing Together community. We'll see you in the next episode.